I speedrun Mario Kart without drifting. Drifting in Mario Kart is a fairly essential tool that you need to learn as early as possible. This is because after every drift you get a short boost which is slightly less effective than a mushroom. Without drifting you lose so much speed and bump into so many walls that it might actually be impossible to beat the game. Let's see if this is actually possible. The speedrun starts off with us picking characters. I decide to pick Diddy Kong and Baby Luigi. I did this for two reasons. First of all, I want to use the baby cart which is really fast. The second reason is because there's a mechanic in Mario Kart Double Dash which gives you a special item if you have certain characters. Diddy Kong's special item is a massive banana which is super useful if you're in first place. Baby Luigi's special item is a chain chomp which is super useful if you're behind. This makes my team fairly balanced no matter what position I'm in. We chose the Mushroom Cup and the first track was Luigi Circuit. This track may seem kind of difficult but it's not that bad without drifting. At the start I was able to get a quick lead and then I managed to snipe Yoshi and Birdo giving me first place. I thought the hard curve part of the track would be a problem but I'm able to safely get to the boosters and turn without slamming into a wall because I'm going too fast. I did have some problems dodging attacks from other players but I still managed to easily beat the level. The second level was called Peach Beach and it was much harder. There's two problems with this level. The first problem is there's a bunch of sharp turns which aren't easy to deal with. The second problem is much bigger and it's those weird animals on the beach which can't touch you, otherwise they throw you up into the air losing you so much time. Dodging them also isn't easy because the water in the ocean randomly moves in and out and if you touch the water it slows you down. Luckily I practiced this run a few times and I was still able to get first place. The third level was insanely difficult. Ironically it was Baby Park. There were so many bananas and shells all around me that it felt impossible to move. This is also the smallest level and requires 2 hard turns every lap. This doesn't seem like a lot but because of how small the level is you need to do 7 total laps. For the first 4 laps I couldn't get to first place, however on lap number 5 I managed to get barely ahead. Luckily I somehow managed to keep my lead and finished in first place. Dry Desert was another level that required a lot of practice. The level had a hurricane which moved unpredictably and would shoot you really high up in the air. There was also a sand trap which pulled you and got stronger the closer you were to the center. The intended way was to just drift until the sand trap no longer grabbed you, but because I couldn't drift I just slowly drove around the circle. This lost me a little bit of time on each lap. Even though there were many small time losses due to overly cautious driving, I still beat the level which won me the gold Mushroom Cup. Next we immediately picked the same characters and entered the Flower Cup. The first track was Mushroom Bridge. Because the track is absolutely massive, drifting isn't really that necessary. I would also take the side track up the bridge every time in order to get the turbo boosts. This allowed me to finish in first. The second track is Mario Circuit. This level doesn't really get that much praise but I absolutely love it. It literally perfectly captures the essence of Mario with Goombas, chain chops and piranha plants and green pipes. This track wasn't too difficult but sometimes you have to drive out of bounds losing time. Other than that I beat the level fairly quickly. The next track was Daisy Cruiser which is my favorite level but it was also one of the most difficult tracks. Even though the cruise ship is fairly big there are so many sharp turns you need to make in the interior of the ship which are absolutely designed with drifting in mind. Luckily I was able to get an early triple mushroom and I just didn't use them until I was ahead because you can't get good items in first place. This secured my lead before the first lap ended and as long as I didn't get targeted by too many blue mushrooms I could maintain this advantage. I had to dodge lots of random bananas which were a problem because the track isn't that wide but I still got first place. The last track of the Flower Cup is Waluigi Stadium. Even though this track was simple I couldn't get into first place until the absolute last lap. Peach and Daisy were so close to beating me and I definitely would have rage quit the speedrun if they hit me with an item on the last few seconds. Luckily I won, winning me the gold Flower Cup. The first track of the Star Cup was probably the hardest track of this entire challenge. It was called Sherbet Land and it had an ice skating section randomly thrown into the level. Even if I was able to drift, it still would have been an extremely difficult section and during my practice run I didn't get close to first place. There is also a second ice skating section but this one had enemies that completely freeze you if you touch them. I played with 200% of my brain power and destroyed this level. The second track was Mushroom City and it was the coolest and biggest level out of all the tracks. It was fairly easy to beat though. The third track was Yoshi Circuit and it took me years to realize the track outline looks exactly like Yoshi. During the second half of the last lap I somehow managed to get into first place. I have no idea how I maintained my lead but I did. The last track of the Star Cup was Donkey Kong Mountain. The level starts off by blasting you out of a cannon all the way up into an active volcano. The track is fairly easy to maneuver around but there is one seriously annoying section on the way down. In this section you need to make a sharp turn and you can't fall off the level if you don't slow down. But the only issue here is there are 2 more times that you need to make this 180-degree turn. This means that for the 3 laps we need to make 9 extremely strong U-turns without drifting at all and we need to be extra sure not to fall off the level. Unfortunately for the other racers I'm absolutely goated with this sauce so I got first place winning me the gold Star Cup. The last cup we need to get for the speedrun is the Special Cup. The first level is Wario Coliseum and it's an absolutely glorious track. This track is so massive that you only need to do 2 laps instead of the normal 3. There is an unfortunate spiral part which is not easy without drifting but the rest of the level was less hard and allowed me to slowly make a comeback from 4th place. There is also a super cool section where you fly over a dangerous pit and the CPU always ignore it but I'm pretty sure it's faster to go through here. I managed to hit the CPU in first place place with an insanely lucky green shell before the end of the level, which allowed me to beat it. The second track was Dino Jungle, and it was a fairly simple level. At the beginning there's a dinosaur that you need to dodge. Luckily it's very slow, so you can just barely move between its legs. There's also a bunch of waterfalls that come up from the ground which you need to avoid, but you can tell when it will pop up because it has an obvious animation. I easily got first place here. The third track was Bowser's Castle. In my opinion, this was the second hardest level. It starts off with womps which fall down and crush you. Then we have to move through random fireballs which can hit you, and one managed to touch me, and because I was on fire I spun and fell off the track. There's also a spinning fire section, but you can drive in between the gaps, so it's not that dangerous. Even though I was seriously behind, because I got good items I slowly approached the first place. On the third lap I hit first place and I immediately threw an item onto the people in second. This gave me a slightly bigger lead which I maintained until the end. The last track was Rainbow Road. This might be the only track which is ironically easier if you don't drift. The reason I say this is because you can fall off the level pretty much anywhere and you kind of need to drive slower than usual. There were also a lot of boosts scattered all around the track, and I took them all because this is still a speedrun and I wanted to shave as much time as possible. There's also a cool section which blasts you upwards. This is super useful if you're in first place because red shells can't follow you if you go through here. A really cool part about Rainbow Road is sometimes a star can crash down into the course, which makes you immune to damage and increases your speed by a lot. This star actually showed up, but I barely missed it, which lost me some time. I did still manage to get first place, which ended the speedrun in 46 minutes. I honestly expected the timer to be longer than an hour, so I'm fairly happy with this.